Goes. Hey, it's Mike Brennan. We're back. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Hope you had a great time. We're back.
Absolutely.
It's already November 27th. I'm having a hard time with that one. Where did the year go, right, Matt?
11 twelfths out of the way. That's pretty hard to believe.
Pretty hard to believe. Okay. So we're doing the ITC Energy Report segment, and we're having a repeat offender here. In this segment, we're going to be talking to Kwafo Adarkwa, Director of Public Affairs with ITC. And well, you know, we always like to assume that folks that are watching the show may not really be familiar with the companies or our guests. So let's start that off, Kwafo, talking about what ITC is and what you guys do.
Yeah, thanks again, Mike and Matt, and then happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays coming for everybody. So ITC is the nation's largest independent electric transmission company. What that means is energy is transferred in a three-tier system. You have power plants that generate it. You have us, a transmission in the middle. You have distribution that gets to your homes and businesses. So we are that middle highway, if you will, of energy throughout the state. We own, operate, and maintain those transmission lines throughout this state and 7 other states across the Midwest. In my role as Director of Public Affairs, I'm entrusted with making a public policy environment that's conducive for us to do business in the state of Michigan and other states as well. I have a variety of different hats I wear within the organization, but really trying to build trust, accountability amongst the stakeholders here in our great state.
Well, thanks for that, Kwafo. Today, we wanted to look forward a little bit to 2024 and talk about what's coming in the energy industry. The last time we talked with you was about a year ago, I think.
Yeah.
We discussed electric vehicles and their potential impact on the grid. Could you give us an update on that topic? I know there's been some talk lately about a little bit of a slowdown in the growth of EVs.
Yeah, and I think as a state, what I will step back for a second and say that we're heading in the right direction, but we have to look at the whole totality of what's happening on the energy system. You know, we went from a model in days gone by where fossil fuel generation was largely near population centers. There wasn't much of a need for that much transmission because everything was close to where it's being produced. We're moving away to a system where the power is produced far distance. And especially with renewable energy, where it's in the places where it's most plentiful. So where the wind regime is more robust, where there's more sun, and we're using transmission as that conduit in between the two vectors. And so when you have that sort of system, obviously a company like ours is paramount for getting that done. And when we think about EVs, it's just one more pressure. You have the pressure of these new forms of resources coming out of the system and the pressure of the load that's going to be for electric vehicles as we look to 2024 and beyond. And so we have a lot of work, progress is going on, but there's a lot of work ahead of us to ensure that the system is in place that gets us to where we need to be in 2024 and beyond from EVs and in other uses for our electric system. And so I'd like to say the other thing to think about as well is extreme weather. Also we've had that here in Michigan. We've had that in other places across the country. It's been well documented. It's another pressure point on our system. And so we as a company have to make sure we are prepared for all those outcomes. EV is just one of many outcomes we have to look at in 2024 and beyond.
Yes, I can speak to extreme weather. I live in Ann Arbor, and we've been down, I think, at least a half a dozen times this year. It isn't your fault. We won't name that other company.
I'm
ITC.
staying out of that, Mike.
Yeah, we'll stay out of that quagmire. So will the grid be ready in 2024 to handle the load?
Yeah, so Mike, good question. In the short term, the answer is yes, but. So yes, there's enough capability on the system in the 2024 timeframe for what we believe is the penetration of electric vehicles on the system. Now, as we look forward, remember what I just said about the different pressures and pressure points on the system. We have to build more capability in the system to allow, if we go to a place where you have 2 million EVs on the road, as the state is kind of earmarked as what they want by 2030, 2 million EVs on the road and 100,000 chargers. That all requires electric load. That all requires investment. That all requires the work that ITC does. And we have to get started on that now. We pretty much should get started on it yesterday. So we have to make sure we have the public policy environment that's conducive for that. We have to make sure we have the equipment in place for that. We have to make sure we work in concert with our customer utilities, our DTEs, our consumers energy of the world, and also the auto manufacturers as well. We all need to be working together in the same direction so we can make sure the customer experience is a good one as we go on this EV adoption curve. And investing in transmission is a great way to start in terms of making sure we have that backbone infrastructure to have the electric highway to match the superhighway we want for our EVs.
Well, obviously, EVs are part of the equation when it comes to the grid, but talk a little bit, if you would, about how the grid supports economic development as well as the EV transition.
Yeah, great question, Matt. I mean, electric transmission in the utility that we provide is the backbone of modern society. Long distance transmission is just critical to our way of life in the modern world. You have to have a reliable electric grid to do anything we want to do. To even conduct this interview, we are on the backbone of the electric transmission and the grid that has enabled all that. So a modernized electric grid is really the fulcrum. It's the center point of where we're going to go between 2024 and however far out you want to go. You have to have that backbone infrastructure in place to ensure we have the way of life that we've grown accustomed to, and that the future demands. When you talk about renewable energy, when you talk about electric vehicles, when you talk about full-on electrification of almost everything in our homes and businesses, you have to have a backbone grid in place to make all of that work.
We've talked about the MISO long-distance transmission projects a little bit on previous episodes, and I think you addressed it when you were on last as well. Yeah. And we know before them that there's a series of multi-value projects or MVP projects I may be pronouncing it right. So MISO or MISO, right?
MISO's a soup. MISO's something different.
Yes, okay, you're right. That's just what I'm thinking of. I'm hungry right now.
MISO.
How do projects like this
after lunch? Yeah.
Yes, there you go. How do projects
I'll meet you at the hibachi place.
Okay. Economy.
I'm sorry, I talked over you, Mike. Ask that one again.
All right. So pause, break. I have lots of things to edit. So how do projects like these contribute to the economy?
Yeah, let's take a step back. So the multi-value projects in what you described, they came out about in the last decade. Multiple values were provided, as it was discussed. They're across 18 different states in the Midwest. The value has outstretched what we initially thought about back in the 2010s. And I've been in this industry for 20 years, so I've seen the evolution of all those projects. We have some here in Michigan, in the Thumb region of our state. That ITC owns and operates, and it's been a great addition to the strength and backbone system there with the multi-value. Now we fast forward to what MISO was looking at the landscape, as we've talked about in this interview, with the changing landscape, new forms of generation, old fossil plants retiring, new forms of generation coming online. So they established these long-range transmission plan projects with different tranches, as they call them. So we have some projects here in Michigan, two in particular, that'll kind of run through the center part of the state and start at the Indiana-Michigan border and run up through the middle part of the state. And they're providing a much needed next level of reliability and flexibility for the grid, and allowing for, as what we talked about, EVs, we talk about renewables, we talk about the changing landscape. These long-range transmission projects are going to be in place to strengthen the grid for the future, to allow for the different purposes and things that are going to happen on the grid. And it's really an insurance policy for that future that is for sure going to be electrified.
Well, speaking of renewables, there have been a lot of conversations lately about renewables, utility scale wind and solar. Does ITC foresee this trend of more renewable energy being built continuing in 2024 and beyond? I know there was a big story, I believe in the Free Press on Sunday, about how there's occasionally popping up opposition to some of these projects in rural areas.
Yeah, I think with the investment that's been made in the utility industry, in other industries as well, I don't see the slowing down of this, if you will. I think all signs push towards electrification and clearer forms of electricity being on the grid. If we want to look at some recent developments, in Lansing, soon to be signed. The energy package of bills that are out there really are moving us more towards 100% clean, and it's defined in different ways, but clean standard by 2040. So that's on the books. And then, you know, the investment that goes along with that, people are making long-term, long-range investments so that you don't just stop that momentum going forward. And so with the adoption of EVs, with the changing dynamics and the landscape, with the sort of the economics that are coming down too from some of the renewables as well, I think all systems are that we're moving forward 2024 and beyond with the retirement of fossil fuels for a lot of our companies, this move to renewable energy and or other forms of energy to get us the reliable grid that, again, that we just crave. We just have to have energy moving forward.
You know, I was reading something, I believe it's part of that energy package that the House and Senate approved and the governor signed. Getting back to your point on local folks being opposed to, you know, putting up solar farms or wind or whatever the case may be. And we're going to have Dan Scripps on here in the next segment so I can confirm that. But I think the MPSC is going to be able to override some of those concerns, is my thinking, right, Kwafo?
Well, Mike, I wouldn't say override is a proper word. I think the commission and Chairman Scripps is someone who can speak to this very eloquently. He's done this for so many years and is a great steward of our state in that regard. I would say it provides a backstop. Everything still starts local. You go through that activity, you go through the process as that doesn't change from today. It's just when there's an issue and there is a conflict in terms of that local piece, then you'll have the commission there as a backstop to kind of adjudicate it. Everyone's voice will be heard, and we can talk about it in that forum to move this stuff forward. Because again, as I mentioned, the train has left the track, so to speak. The movement is towards different forms of generation coming online. That's just where investment is going. That's just where the landscape is for the utility sector. And so this just provides a bit of backstop in that regard. And again, I know Chairman Scripps will do a wonderful job talking about that in your next segment.
Yeah, I was reading a story from the PBS website just this morning in preparation for talking with you and Chairman Scripps today. And there's a lot of misinformation included in some of this anti-utility scale wind and solar projects. Like offshore wind has never worked anywhere. Not true. Wind turbines kill tons of birds. Also not true. Actually, conventional power plants kill more birds. So, I mean, you know, a lot of this, I think, is just breaking through the noise and getting people accustomed to change. And, you know, some people don't like just the way the wind turbines look. I think they're beautiful, you know, because each one of them is, to me, you know, another chance for the planet here to stop burning fossil fuels so much.
Well, and again, as a company, we're agnostic in terms of how, you know, the generation comes to us. Our job at the end of the day is to provide reliable power. But I will say, yeah, I mean, you know, it makes for interesting. We just had Thanksgiving, interesting energy talk at the table when we talk about what's happening in the landscape, right? And some people share your opinion about the aesthetics and the beauty of the things, and we also know that some people don't like what those things are, and they don't like change. And all I can say and all I can offer is that change is sort of inevitable at this point. We're moving towards this. There's a lot of investment being made. You know, that's just where the landscape is going. And our job, you know, as a utility, as the folks that regulate as a utility as well, to be able to see that future, try to get us there, you know, with the least stress on the system, and try to make sure things stay reliable and we keep the way of life we've grown accustomed to in the energy sector for so many years.
Take us out, Matt.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much from ITC and Kwafo for being with us here today. And I'm sure we'll be back. You know, hopefully it won't be a year before you're back again. I hope.
Anytime you want me, anytime you guys want me, I'm good. You guys are great. Thanks, Matt and Mike.
All right, we'll be back.
We'll
be back in just a minute with another segment of MITechNews.TV. For right now, it's Matt Roush
and Mike Brennan.
And you are watching MITechNews.TV.
Further ado, let's bring in Michigan Public Service Commission Chairman Dan Scripps, who's been on the show, I don't know, 3 or 4 times now. What do you think, Dan?
I think that's right. Yeah, it's always great to be with you.
All right, cool. Well, I wanted to get a little bit off track, but we'll get back onto the main topic of winter energy supplies and prices. But we've just had the ITC folks on board doing their monthly update on their energy report. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in the new legislation that has been approved, the energy legislation, you guys, the MPSC, in the case of a local folks being against, say, a new solar farm or wind farm or whatever, you will weigh into the process in some way, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. So how does that all play out?
Yeah, it starts with the local unit of government. So if a developer wanting to develop a project in a township meets with the township supervisor, and if they have a compatible ordinance with what's available at the state level, they have to start at the local level. If they get a rejection from the local government, or if the local government sort of takes more than 4 months, which can be extended, then they don't have to, but they can pursue citing from the state, from the commission. And that's similar to how we cite a lot of other energy infrastructure projects, high voltage electric wires, pipelines for natural gas and petroleum and other liquids. So it's something that we've got familiarity doing. We do carbon dioxide pipelines too. So it's something that we've been entrusted by the legislature with citing other critical energy infrastructure, and it provides a path if ultimately things get hung up at the local level. That said, the protections that the legislature wrote into law to ensure that local units of government and adjoining property owners and the like have a voice in the process goes way beyond anything else that we have in statute. So local units of government can intervene by right in our cases, that the developer actually pays their costs for intervening in our cases. That's something that doesn't exist in pipeline cases, I can assure you. So there's, I think, a desire to have a balance here where locals get a say, and we absolutely will listen to what they say. But there are times that the state interest in these energy infrastructure projects outweighs the local interest that's purely local, and I think the recognition that in those instances there's got to be a process that the state can move forward with projects that are of importance to the state as a whole.
Well, without asking you to make any value judgments that might get us all in trouble, I was just, I don't know if you heard me earlier, I was just reading a PBS story this morning about some of the misinformation that's involved in some of the opposition to especially wind projects. The whole thing about, strobing of light of the sun coming through turbine blades, the noise of turbine blades, what the levels of noise are, the fact that do turbines kill birds? Well, yes, some, but actually conventional power plants kill more. There's been peer-reviewed research on that. I mean, you need at some point, I think, to fight the misinformation that I don't want to say is funded by the oil industry, but I think that's might be a safe bet.
Well, two things. One is there are a number of provisions in the legislation dealing with sort of maximum noise levels, minimum distances in terms of setback for both wind and solar and energy storage projects. So trying to have some reasonable limits, but without sort of allowing that to kill every project that we need to keep the lights on. And the other part is the best place for this to be adjudicated is sort of in an evidence-based proceeding, and that's what we do at the commission. That our decisions are based on the law that's in front of us and the quality of the evidence in an adversarial court-like process, and that allows, I think, for more of that evidence that you were talking about, and less of maybe some of the emotional pleas for projects that really are of importance to the state as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I can see the opposition to wind projects because, I mean, some of these things are 500-600 feet tall, and it does change the look of the landscape quite dramatically. Anyone who's driven north of Lansing on 127 can attest to that. But I don't get the opposition to solar projects. I don't understand that at all, because those hug the ground. I don't get it.
Yeah,
anyway,
a lot of it is, concern over the loss of farmland. And I get it. We actually need to consider the effects on prime farmland and the effects on how much of a local community is dedicated to energy generation. But ultimately, this is about private property, that these are farmers often who want to keep their land in production, want to pass it on to the next generation. This gives them some guaranteed income that allows for some of those choices to be made while keeping the rest of it. It might be that they dedicate 40 acres or 100 acres, but they keep the other 200 in production. And that sort of allows a private property owner to make choices about what to do with their land often in ways that ultimately preserve it in agriculture, as opposed to selling the whole thing for development of a subdivision. And there's no restrictions on that. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and for what little I know of farming, sometimes you want to have some of your ground lay fallow for a year or two to reperk. So that could be a good place to put your solar farm, right? Or something along those lines.
yeah, and they're increasing the ability to do agriculture, particularly grazing for animals and things like that. So and there are things that we need to look at in cases that ultimately end up in front of the commission. So we'll sort that out.
Okay. Well, we deviated a little bit from what we were planning to talk about, so let's return to that topic. Oh, I think several weeks ago there was a report that came out from the MPSC talking about, well, what we're all concerned as I look out my window and see 2 inches of snow on the ground and it's 28 degrees out. So what's our situation for winter energy supplies? Abundance? Yes, no? Prices? High, low?
Yeah,
What's it going to be?
We're in a good place to start the winter. This is something we do every year, twice a year, actually. So in the winter, we look primarily at heating related issues. So natural gas, propane, obviously electricity plays a role in that as well. And then in the summer energy appraisal, we look at things, like gasoline prices, and as folks are traveling around our beautiful state, that are more front of mind. But what we're finding is that we've got a decline in electricity demand overall. That the consumption of natural gas is projected to increase entirely due to the growing role that natural gas plays in our electricity system. Gas use and other things, including home heating, is expected to decline. And when you look at some of the volatility in the propane markets and even sort of to a lesser extent in gas over the last couple of years, seeing pretty significant price run-ups, those have moderated as well. So we start from a position of lower costs in general, and sort of real sort of firm resources, both in our sort of unique natural gas storage, underground storage, but also sort of across the board in terms of energy supplies. We start from a good place. You don't ever want to get too confident or take anything for granted, but we're starting winter in a good place.
So is the decline in electric consumption, electric demand forecasted, is that a result of continuing conservation efforts and efficiency?
Yeah, a lot of it is that we've got some of the best energy efficiency programs in the country. The American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy actually ranked us third of the 50 states in terms of our utility efficiency programs. And you really see that showing up, particularly in the reduction on residential demand. Slight increase in industrial demand, and I think that's attributable to some of the economic growth projects that we've landed, some of the expansions that we've seen in the news.
Yeah, I can tell you, I know anecdote is not data, but at my house, I spent the last 2 days decorating my house for the holidays.
Energy consumption.
So that now you could basically use my house as a Hallmark movie set. But all of the lights that I'm using are now LED. Mm-hmm. And it's just amazing how much less power those things use. A string of 300, of those little twinkly outdoor lights. I think it was something like 40. The demand was 40 watts for the incandescent ones and 6 watts for the LED ones. And the LED ones cost a little more, but I'm thinking, oh, geez, why not? Because they work for years and they basically use no electricity to speak of. So, that writ large across an entire society, I think LED lighting is a big part of it.
Yeah, huge. We kicked off our weekend by watching Christmas Vacation. I'm always amused as an energy regulator when, the Alleluia chorus plays and the lights all come on. They show the meter and it's just spinning like crazy. It's like, well, it's a little better than when Clark W. Griswold was flipping his switch because of the LED lights.
Yeah. Hey, the other thing that we could talk about if you feel comfortable doing so, I believe the new energy regs that just came out of the legislation 2040, that I'm not sure if it will be 100% renewable, but a large part renewable. Did I get that right?
Yeah, it's 100% clean energy by 2040 and 80% by 2035. And then on the renewable side, 60% by 2035 with an interim step of 50% by 2030. So they sort of step up and then step further up. Clean energy is defined a bit more broadly. It's renewable energy plus nuclear gas, but only if it's got carbon capture and sequestration connected to it. And then there's some flexibility for us as the commission to define other clean energy resources that are sort of consistent with the legislature's general sort of approach to this. So it's, and I will say one of the important pieces, these are ambitious targets. They're some of the most ambitious targets in the country,
Yeah.
but they run through our integrated resource planning process. So we get to optimize for cost and reliability, just like we do today, but with stronger targets. And the flexibility that's built in and some of the off-ramps. I feel really good about this legislation. This feels ambitious, but also implementable, that it's not just words on paper or something that's going to, crash the grid or spike bills. Those protections were written in by the legislature, and to do it through a process, a methodical planning process that's been in place since 2016, I think shows us how we can continue to step up.
You said that natural gas is a big part of this. How about nuclear?
It is, yeah. So nuclear is about a fifth of our electricity generation today. We'll see if we can bring Palisades back on. We're all pushing for that, fingers crossed, but that would bump it up to closer to a quarter. And we're looking currently under a study directed by the legislature what the future of nuclear might look like in Michigan. And it offers a lot in terms of base load, carbon-free power that's always there. So my expectation is that it'll continue to play an important role in the energy mix, and there's an accommodation for that in the definition of clean energy.
And of course, if we could switch it from fission to fusion, then we'd have the sun power. But I think that's a bit too much for the. I mean, I cover all that stuff, and I know the technology is not quite there yet. So who knows?
Yeah, the joke is that it's 10 years away and has been for the last 40 years. So,
that's
I'll
exactly.
also say, some of the researchers at MIT and U of M and other places are just doing amazing things there. So I think it's, there's real promise there, but it's still got to get to market.
Yeah,
So,
that was I used to work at Cranes Detroit Business, and that was the owner Keith Crane's joke about electric vehicles. He would say, the electric vehicle has been 5 years away my entire life. Well, they're finally here. They finally got here. And hopefully someday the same will be true for fusion power. But anyway, Mike, go ahead.
well, I'm just going to say, as we wrap towards the end, so ambitious goals, achievable goals. Are you a little worried about, this is quite a hurdle to get over? Do you think the state can do it?
I do, in part because of the flexibility that's built into the legislation, because of some of the ways that they run through our processes and allow us to ensure that it's affordable and reliable. But also, we have the first energy storage requirement in the Midwest, and one of the most ambitious, and that helps sort of address some of the variability, as well as a study into longer term, sort of multi-day duration storage. So by taking a pretty technology neutral approach, saying we want to get to 100% clean energy, and a lot of that's going to be renewables, but we've got a flexibility in planning and in technology resources, I think this gives us an achievable path to some pretty ambitious goals.
Take us out, Matt.
All right. Thanks so much. We want to thank Chairman Scripps of the Michigan Public Service Commission for being with us today. We'll be back in just a minute with another segment of the M Squared TechCast, MITechNews.TV. For right now, it's Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And you're watching MITechNews.TV.
Now, as we move on, we've got Bill Mayer from Ann Arbor SPARK. For those who don't know what Ann Arbor SPARK is, I'm not sure how many of them there are now, but there's a lot of different smart zones around the state where there's accelerators and incubators involved, and SPARK is part of that. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but did I describe that correctly?
You did. I agree with that description.
All right, good to know. And so we wanted to get him on because a couple of weeks ago, the Strategic Fund allocated $73 million to all these various zones around the state, and that the money is going to be divvied up to do a variety of things. Now, I know SPARK is involved in that, and my understanding is SPARK is also going to be administering part of the funds or managing it, but I'm a little unclear on that, so I'm hoping you could clear that up for me.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And, let it be known that MITechNews.TV is the place you find out the real story. Cranes published a misstatement saying that we would be doing the administration for the entire state. We are only one awardee that is covering Livingston, Washtenaw, and Monroe counties. So we'll be doing the administration of the $3 million grant that we received, plus the $426,000 that we also received to do direct grants to businesses. The funding and resources that are available outside of Livingston, Washtenaw, Monroe will be managed by other folks. There'll be each hub program kind of does its own administration straight up to the Michigan Economic Development Corporation.
Okay, that's good to know. I guess I gotta go. I gotta go change the news release about LTU's grant that I just posted online.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. We contacted Cranes and said, we think we're great, but we're not that great. We're not doing the whole state. We're just doing the whole piece.
Yeah, not doing the whole 73 million. Huh?
Well, no. and of course, Matt can't talk bad about Cranes because he's a Cranes alumni.
Yeah,
so.
I'm a Cranes refugee from long ago. Yes,
yep.
Right. So yeah, tell us about what Spark's plans are with this grant. What are you going to be doing with it?
Sure. So, one of the things that's always been a challenge for Spark, and it's something personally that I've always found really challenging, is the legislation that enables smart zones, gives us budget to do the work that we do. It always has, limits on it. It has restrictions on what we can and cannot do. And I respect the state of Michigan's decision, and I think it was a good one, to focus from an economic development standpoint on, sort of scalable tech companies like, I don't know, a Duo Security or a LlamaSoft or a SkySpecs or something like that. But there's lots of other types of businesses. I mean, Michigan Tech News, that's a great business. You look at, your coffee shops, your restaurants, a law firm, that's a great business, but it doesn't fall into that scalable, high growth, potentially venture capital appropriate type of company. And so it's always been a little frustrating, actually probably more than a little frustrating to us, that we just don't have budget to serve those types of companies. So credit to the MEDC, they last year they incorporated into their strategic plan support for traditional small businesses. This grant opportunity is really the kind of the funding to activate that support element for small businesses. So they put out the request for proposals. We all applied. We modeled our proposal after a program that we've already been running that we received some grant funding for called Advance Your Business, or we also call it a micro enterprise grant. So we basically just scaled that up and we brought in partners to keep doing the work that we'd already have been doing to support these companies.
So,
all right. So what will you be doing for these companies? What does the micro grant program do? Does it provide mentoring, operational support? Is it direct investment into a business? What's the format?
Well, it's going to do two things. Number one, the various hub partners, and I'll go over those. The Howell Chamber of Commerce, Jewish Family Services here in Ann Arbor, Launch 734, which is Monroe County Business Alliance entity, the Michigan Small Business Development Center. And anyone that's listening that has a business, you should know who the SBDC is. They provide free counseling services to all types of businesses all over Michigan. They also have an Uplift Michigan Business Development Program. Washtenaw Community College has an excellent entrepreneurship center. These are all our partners in this grant. So some of this has not yet been defined. We put the high level proposal together. They said, okay, we're going to give you this money, but we don't actually have it yet. So now what we're doing is fleshing out the full, exactly who does what. But generally what you're going to see is a business that has needs such as they need help with marketing, they need help with accounting and finance or banking, they need help, with sort of operations and systems or human resources issues. Generally if you're a business owner, you know what your struggles are. So we have some flexibility to build the infrastructure and these support hubs that they can be delivering this counseling and advice for years to come. Then what we can also do is we have budget to engage specific service providers. For example, we look at your accounting and say, oh boy, this is a mess. Okay, what do we do about it? Well, maybe we could bring a CPA in to help you get your system cleaned up and where it needs to be. And then the $426,000 that we have for our grant award, it varies from hub to hub. We have ideas on what we want to do with that also, but I'll say stay tuned on that. you're going to see lots of press releases coming out for us that talk about the specifics of the program. You know, we just found out we got it. We're now in a sprint to craft the program with the goal of having it funded, up and running, and businesses participating by Q1 2024.
Wow. And as someone who's, I have to admit, working with Spark, I have a software as a service company I'm developing on the side. Bill's very much aware of that.
I am.
Any money available for MVPs out of that? Will that be part of it or not?
Well, so there's a couple qualifying criteria that you need to be aware of. So, you know, if you're familiar with, you know, the SETI designation, the socially and economically disadvantaged individuals, if a business meets the definition of having SETI ownership, that is a qualifying criterion for you. Also, businesses located in, sort of qualified census tract areas, rural areas of Michigan, or CDFI investment areas, basically underserved or, disadvantaged communities. So, locally for us, if you look at Ypsilanti, that certainly qualifies as an eligible area. And then the third qualification is going to be that a business can demonstrate a disproportionate negative impact from COVID. So if your business existed before March 2020 and you had negative, I'm trying to think of a business that didn't have a negative impact.
Yeah, right. I was going to say they all had a
COVID.
negative impact.
Zoom maybe.
Yeah, Zoom did good,
yeah,
but everybody else
not
so much.
So so if you have if you're still smarting a little bit from COVID, that's certainly a qualifying criteria. So those are the big three that you want to try and fall into. Everyone else, we're just going to have to evaluate and see who else we can serve. But Mike, to answer your question, one of the hardest things for us to fund as a state is, sort of this MVP, which stands for minimum viable product development. A lot of times people just have to get really creative and scrappy about how to put together. It's usually how do I want to say this? Not good. Your MVP, it's usually something that you prove your point about what you're trying to build, you throw that away, and then you build a real product. So yeah, it's always a chicken and egg thing with software companies.
Yeah, it's kind of a demo. You can explain it till you're blue in the face, but if you can't actually show them how it works, they don't get it,
Right.
So,
yeah. My favorite example is from the Lean Startup, the book, where the founder of Dropbox, it was too hard to actually build something that worked. So he just did video animations about what it would look like once it was built.
Oh, I like that idea.
Hey,
Clever. I'll have to mention that to my board. We just had a board meeting this morning, so
I was going to say mention that to your developers, huh?
Yeah, hey guys, I have another idea. So a lot less expensive. All right. So go ahead, Matt.
Well, I was just going to say that our Centropolis accelerator here at LTU also got a grant under this program. We got
congratulations.
Yeah, we got $3.4 million, and basically they're going to use it to do. Dan Radomski's in charge of that enterprise, and he's doing a heck of a job. They've helped commercialize 300, I think, physical products and generate over $300 million in capital for new companies and create 600 plus jobs. And he's just going to use that money to do more of what they're already doing, which is basically taking entrepreneurs or existing companies with ideas for new manufactured physical products and having a small army of experts and residents do design for manufacturability analysis and market analysis, that kind of thing. So that's they're more in the physical product space than you folks, though. You've always been more about software and apps, and it's not like you've had any successes or anything, like Duo and like that.
Right. Yeah, and Dan is a good friend, heck of a hockey player too.
I did not know that. That's cool
for
right.
Dan trivia. But one of the goals that we have with Michigan, and I think LTU is a perfect example of this, is we do have physical product companies in Washtenaw County, but there's absolutely no reason that they couldn't participate in LTU's programming and receive excellent help and advance their business. So I've always really appreciated, I think this is something that has really evolved over the last 10 years. And I think, it really has a lot to do with some of the programs that the MEDC put in place that provided funding for us to work with these companies together. Because when everybody has a good book of clients, we're all very collaborative. It's when people start feeling like they're a little starving for new business that you run into trouble. We're very busy in the entrepreneurship space. I track quite closely what the national and global trends are. And Michigan seems to be outperforming the rest of the nation right now on things like new company starts and employment growth and capital raised. So as you look at these opportunities for these different programs to exist, Spark doesn't need to do everything. LTU is extremely good at what you just described. Therefore, we don't have to do that. We can refer them to you, and we can focus on our core competencies. And you're seeing a lot of that around the state.
Yeah, and that was the thing about the grant that the Centropolis Accelerator got, is that their focus is statewide under the grant. They're not restricted to a geographic area. So
exactly. And we're trying to structure our grant such that, if you've got the Howell Chamber of Commerce and then you've got the folks down in Monroe, that any of the businesses in these areas could benefit from working with any of the partners in the organization.
All right. So any final thoughts before we let you go? I know you're a busy guy.
It's true. I just view this as a very, very bright new chapter for the state of Michigan. We talk about driving industries, and that's not a pun towards cars. We talk about driving industries like dual security that we've talked about that are adding hundreds of jobs in the tech space. But the small business economy is incredibly valuable to Michigan and the United States. It's where the most jobs are created. You look at what the state has to invest in a small business to get the return they want. It's the best deal going. So this is a really nice addition to the portfolio of support available to Michigan businesses.
And I know there's still some details to be worked out. So maybe later, another month or so, or maybe right after the first of the year, when you get all that worked out, we'll get you back on the show and you can share those details.
I would be happy to do that. And then anyone can visit AnnArborUSA.org. On the services on our front page, you'll see the small business services right there. So at any time, people can go for updates, subscribe to our newsletters, etc.
All right, Matt, take us out.
Okay, thanks so much to Bill Meyer of Ann Arbor SPARK for being with us today and talking about their grant under the Small Business Hub program of the MEDC. Very valuable use of American Rescue Plan funds. We'll be back in just a moment with another segment of MITechNews.TV. For right now, it's Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And you're watching MITechNews.TV.
Well, anyway, I want to introduce Latrish Matson. I don't think Matt knows you, but I've known Trish for a while. She's one of my cannabis friends. As I think I'm pretty well connected, but compared to her, probably not. She's really well connected, and she's joined Dan Keelan and I on a project that we're developing about cannabis tourism called Sparx Recreation. She's right now in Las Vegas at the MIBizCon convention, and Matt's very familiar with Las Vegas conventions because he's gone to the Consumer Electronics Show for a gazillion years out there, right? So,
Yep.
So anyway, she's out there today, and I wanted to introduce her as a new member of our crew, the other one being Anthony Freed, who we had on the show about a month ago. And today, or this week, I guess, you guys are going to be working together. Part of what Anthony's really behind, and I think Trish is involved in as well, is think of the Anthony Bourdain of infused cooking. That's what Anthony Freed wants to be, or at least he wants to work with along those lines. And so I think you want to do that as well, Trish, but we're kind of leaving it open to her, whatever she wants to pursue. So what I know you've been out there for a few days, so how are things looking? Are you meeting a lot of great people?
I actually came out here about 3 days before the event. The event actually is going to be starting tomorrow. In the meantime, Sparx and Rex is something that I'm very interested in getting more involved in. Since I've been here, I went around to a lot of the different dispensaries just to get to know a little bit about what they're doing as far as bringing in tourists. It's giving me a lot of ideas that I can look for in Michigan too as well. I'm also creating a lot of influencer content The more people that like my content, the more they'll listen to me. So as far as I'm concerned, it is going to be a really, really busy event. And what our goals are here is to be able to meet some very interesting people, go to a couple different places, and get a lot of good content there. Bring it back home.
So how big is this conference? How many people are expected to attend?
Thousands, 10,000, 11,000, 12,000. It's huge. It's huge.
Lots of exhibitors too. I think several hundred, right?
Yes. And Vegas is very, very big on their conventions and whatnot. So people from the city will be here too. So it's going to be a big turnout.
Is it at the Las Vegas Convention Center?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that is a building. If you thought Cobo was big, go to the Las Vegas Convention Center. I think that's about 5 Cobos. I'm sorry, Huntington Place.
Yeah, that's right. We got to get it right here. Make sure that Huntington, they paid for those naming rights, So
yeah. But that is a gigantic cavernous convention center, and it is also a place where they can set up a trade show in just a remarkably brief period of time. Because I've gone to the Consumer Electronics Show early, and I'd be there 2 days before the thing started, and I was like, no way is this all going to be ready by Thursday or whatever the date was. And it is. It's amazing what you can do when you work 24/7. So I'm sure it'll be a very impressive show. So
I'm here with my family, actually, and both of the members I'm staying with actually work at that convention center. And they said it's quite amazing. They have to bring lots and lots of semis and tons of people.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So what is the goal? I mean, are you just there to spread the word about 420 Media and Sparx Recreation? Do you folks have an exhibit, or what's your role
He's
there?
covering it. I got her press credentials. So
okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So I'm going to I've always been out and about doing my own thing independently. This opportunity, plus being able to report for 420 Media, I have a lot of different people, a lot of different topics that I can interview people about. There are a lot of cool products that I want to be able to showcase. There's a lot of different types of, I would say, there are some tourism groups that are going to be here too as well. So I kind of want to go there and get to know them a little bit and just understand what they do and how things are working out for them in their state, to do some comparisons in tourism for cannabis. So the sky's the limit. I can really do anything I want to, but the thing that I have in mind the most is trying to do what I can do to help get some information to, of course, explore different options that we'll be able to have in Michigan.
Yeah, one of the things that, and again, I wish it was my idea, but it's not. Anthony Freed came to us with the idea, and we percolated on it for a few days in a week and thought, that's one thing that we are not aware of any of our competitors in Michigan being involved in, or even in the region for that matter. So we're in the process of exploring that. There are a lot of cannabis chefs in Michigan. You'd be surprised at the number, this big number.
Yes.
But they're real low key. You just don't hear much about them. And so what we want to do, think of Julia Childs kind of, where two goals. One, a chef that's already really good at infused cooking and shares his secrets. Another is all those folks at home are going, gosh, I'd really like to be able to use THC in my products, but not put all my guests to sleep right after the meal, right? And so that would be the two tracks we're kind of looking at, is for the novice and for the pro, somebody that really knows what they're doing and somebody that knows nothing about what they're doing. And then we'll kind of work in those two spaces. And I think we can develop a lot of interesting content, right, Trish?
I actually believe so. Yes. It's just, there's a lot of gems out there. They need to be lifted up. And I think we're going to be able to do it.
Matt?
Yeah, way back in high school, I had some friends who went to Western Michigan University, and we had a Friendsgiving dinner at Thanksgiving before the term Friendsgiving had been coined. And somebody made some stuffing for turkey, some dressing for turkey that had a little bit of green stuff sprinkled into it, and it gave it a really interesting flavor. And it wasn't so much that it put us to sleep; it was just very pleasant. And that's the kind of thing that I think it would be interesting to explore now that it's legal. And I mean, it does have a flavor to it. I mean, it could become another condiment. It could be the next cumin or something like that, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, and for those that don't want to go the THC route, there's also CBD, which is very good for you. I mean, I take a CBD gummy quite often to help me sleep at night because it just relaxes me. And for those who don't know, there's no very small amount of THC and CBD, so it isn't going to get you high or anything. But it works with your endocannabinoid system in your body, and in many cases relaxes you, or we can't talk about medical things because the FCA wouldn't let us do that, or FDA, excuse me. And but there are a lot of medical uses for it as well. But those are things we can explore moving forward. This is brand new. We haven't officially launched right now. We're in the gathering and promotion stage. So we're really looking at a first quarter launch to get this thing off the ground.
Well, and I just wanted to tell you both that I think the title of the thing, Sparx Recreation, is absolutely brilliant. Whose idea was that?
It was originally Charlie Strackbine who was working with us from the Monroe Street Fair. He came up with the idea, and so he's really focused on the fair. So we're still working with Charlie to a degree, but he's not an active part of our group. So I wanted to bring in some real seasoned veterans because Charlie's been around forever, knows everybody. And a little bit of your background. For instance, you started the Michigan Weedsters. Now tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. The Michigan Weedsters is a advocate group that lobbies and participates and trying to help patients and caregivers protect their rights for, of course, the Medical Marijuana Act. And what we do is we report news and we interview and we show up to different events when we're needed. And there's a big group of us now, which is kind of nice because it was a lot of work, a lot of research to be able to make sure when we are producing our content that we're doing it truthfully and as far as we can do factually. This group is actually going to be here in Las Vegas. Coincidentally, all the Michigan Weedsters are here. So they did actually set us up for a panel. So now we have a speaking panel here because the Weedsters have been so successful, even at a grassroots level, that we are now receiving messages from other groups in other states that want to know about our model and how we achieved what we have. And really, it's just a matter of organization. We have it's a lot easier for us to organize now than it used to be in the past. So with systems programs and everything else in front of us, it's a lot easier to do what we're doing. So it's going to be really neat to talk about what's going on in Michigan, the industry, about how our patient and caregiver program is going. And I'd also like to point out too that Michigan is one of the best states for cannabis, regardless if it's recreational or medical. There's a lot of different things that I'm seeing out here in Vegas, particularly to that. But yeah, we definitely have been going on it for about 3 years. And I'm kind of branched off a little bit these days just because I'm kind of trying to pursue my career and my journalism career. And but for now that we have a group and people are really putting a lot more action and energy into it, we're seeing it climb very high to the point where our association should be completed hopefully by the end of the year. So we're moving out of the grassroots.
And I know, as far as Sparx and Recreation goes, you see so much in the tourism industry, particularly in northern Michigan, of wine tourism and beer tourism, and now more recently spirits and distillery tourism. It would seem, weed tourism would be absolutely natural outgrowth of that.
Mm-hmm.
So Latricia, you're doing journalism there. You are committing journalism. Congratulations. Where can we read it or see it?
You'll be able to find some information or some content that I produce with Sparx and Recs. You'll be able to find some at highlyeffectivemedia.com, michiganweedsters.com. And that's it so far.
Okay. All right, Mike, I'm going to ask you to give the web address now. So how do people get a hold of Sparx and Recreation?
Well, actually, it's the spelling. It's SPARXN, initial N, REC.com, sparksandrec.com. And then that's more of the cannabis tourism and now the culinary stuff. Then if you want just straight news, it's 420post.com, spelled out FOUR20post.com, because all the other 420s were domain names are already taken, right?
Yeah,
So
I can imagine.
we do straight news, and then we do the cannabis culinary stuff, which is more lifestyle kinds of stuff. And so that's the two places you can find it. And we'll get Trish and Anthony and both of those places here real soon.